Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and today we are going to talk to a rising star from Europe. Her name is very difficult to pronounce, but I'm trying to do justice to it. It's Onya Noska Stavrovska, and we will be calling her Leah on the show for the short form for Leposava. She's an assistant lecturer at the Faculty of Law in International Balkan University in Northern Macedonia. If you remember last year, or actually in October, little more than a year ago, I had visited her university at her invitation and had given a few lectures in the capital of North Macedonia. It was a wonderful experience. Professor Stavrovska, who just completed her dissertation, was also a special advisor to the Deputy Prime Minister for European Affairs and International Affairs advisor to the Minister of Defense. Within the transatlantic context, she was a scholar at the Study of U.S. Institutes program, which was sponsored by the State Department at the University of Delaware, and that is how we met, and I have since been extremely impressed with her scholarship. So welcome to Khanversations, Leah.
Thank you for this great honor, dear Professor Dr. Khan.
Good. So today we're going to basically talk about two things. One, we are going to talk about how Europe has reacted to what can only be described as an extraordinary occurrence in the White House last Friday between the U.S. President Donald Trump, the Vice President J.D. Vance, and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. That little encounter, even though the meeting was for 45 minutes, that 10-12 minutes of last minutes has caused, I guess, an earthquake in transatlantic relations. And so there are very serious questions that have been raised about the future of NATO, about the future of U.S. role in European security, and also the future of Zelensky himself and the future of the war in Ukraine and what is going to happen. Europeans are naturally nervous that America has literally changed sides from supporting Ukraine to maybe supporting Russia. And so first, give us a little context of where is North Macedonia in this, Leah? Because I think that North Macedonia is, the position is a little bit delicate, isn't it? Given that it is part of NATO and not part of EU. So how is North Macedonia dealing with this? And then we'll talk about the European reaction to what is happening between US and Ukraine. And then we will also talk a little bit about the rise of right-wing parties and what that also means to US and Europe relations. So first, tell us about North Macedonia and how, like, if you're in North Macedonia, how are you reacting to all of this?
Well, the best way to explain where is North Macedonia is probably to say that it is in Europe, but it is not within the European Union, while on the other side, it is a NATO member state. And this context actually puts North Macedonia in a bit complicated situation, I would say, maybe more complicated than some of the other European countries, especially countries from the Western Balkans as a geopolitical region, because we are now at a crossroad when we need to align our foreign policy not only with the European Union on one side, but also with the United States. What was known till now before this earthquake, as you explained, was the topic of Euro-Atlantic integration. So usually the pro-Western approach of not only North Macedonia, but also other countries from the region was towards European Union on one side, but also towards the United States at the same time. So when we were speaking about presence of other geopolitical actors of the global scene, we were usually speaking about influence by Russia or China or maybe the Middle East. But what is new in our context, in our foreign policy, is that now there are different stances. On one side, European Union, on the other side, the United States. So what our country currently is trying to do within its foreign policy is to balance, if there is such thing, these new events in the global scene. And maybe one example of it was our voting recently at the General Assembly at the United Nations, when actually two resolutions were proposed by actors who till now were known as being on one side.
So, was North Macedonia invited to Starmer's event in London, to that event that he had within 2 days after the event in the White House?
No, and that is a great highlight from your side, since it was an event that was intended to unify Europe and all its allies. But on the other side, countries that are not part of the European Union, including North Macedonia, were not invited to this gathering.
Even the Baltic states.
That is probably one thing that explains what's going on the European scene.
I can understand that it must be delicate. You want to be part of the European Union, but you also want the security umbrella of NATO. I think the best advice that I could give is that just stay quiet till this whole affair settles down. Without having to pick a side. I think that probably be the best strategy, is to not get noticed at this moment. Don't you think?
Yes, to stay under the radar. I also believe that probably is the best approach. On the other side, we as countries, as small states in this very complicated world, we are taken seriously only when we are making problems.
Yeah.
So that's another issue. But I believe that we still do not have the risk of entering into this already very complicated scene.
So, Leah, how did you react when you saw what happened in the White House, and then subsequently Donald Trump basically kicked Zelensky out of the White House and has cut off or paused all military and financial aid to Ukraine? How do you see this? Like, what is your reaction to it?
Well, as US President Trump said, this would be very good on television. So it looked like the TV show broadcasted like a reality show. On one side, it revealed the new directions, the new compass of the American policy and politics, probably very openly. On another side, it was kind of hard to watch that, because it was like bullying the one who is in a weak situation. So I have very, very mixed reactions about the event in the White House, but probably it was something that was very historic, and we have just seen something that probably will be written in the books in the next couple of years. And that just confirms that we are living in a very historic times. The British quote for that is, may you live in interesting times, but that was always used as a curse, so not as a good thing.
How are people that you interacted with? You were traveling at this time. You were in Germany, and I noticed when I traveled through Europe is that Europeans are far more connected with each other, especially scholars, etc. So how do you think that the European international relations community is reacting to this? I can guess from the statements that Macron and Starmer and other leaders are making, but what are the experts saying, and what is the public thinking about what is happening to US-Europe relations?
Well, politicians would say, as in Germany, it was actually said that this was a wake-up call. However, this wake-up call was probably put with a snooze alarm on it, since this should have been assumed that it's going to happen. Europe, at the level of citizens, I believe that they are concerned about the implications of war. Maybe they are not thinking that much about foreign policy when they are making their choice during the voting ballots, but they're thinking about all the consequences of the war, of a prolonged war, because we are already a few years into this situation. All the pressure when it comes to funding defense, And now, even with the increased thresholds, issues that are emerging because of immigration in Europe, while on the side of the experts, it's approached as a totally new event in the world, in the global politics, that requests immediate response and probably a very decisive shift when it comes to policy making in Europe.
Are they worried about the fact that the US lack of support going forward to Ukraine, which could be temporary? And if, I mean, on the US side, the demands are that either Zelensky apologizes to Donald Trump or Ukraine changes its leadership and its policy. I mean, those things are very, very strong. And so basically sign the minerals deal and then also basically accept the peace process that Donald Trump is proposing. There is no way the US is going to support war anymore, unless Putin turns away from it. And then I don't know what Donald Trump is going to do. But right now, when you listen to some MAGA people, they just want to walk away from this whole, the war in Ukraine and even from NATO. Is that a serious concern, or are Europeans still taking the US support and US security umbrella for granted?
I believe that Europe definitely is not taking US support and US umbrella when it comes to security for granted. Probably they realize that it's not going to be there forever. And we are living in a phase where all the pillars of the world as we know it are not only already shaken, but probably totally cut. So the only way to sustain the situation in Ukraine by now was on the basis of the US support, of the US military aid. That is a fact that is well known in Europe. So on the other side, there is no right time for such new circumstances in the world. But Europe has already been struggling with many issues when it comes to the security architecture, but also the project of European integration as such. So we have the liberal order at stake. On the other side, we have Europe at stake. And what we have seen last week, I was in Germany, as you know, is that now we also have Germany at stake. So that makes this whole situation even more complicated. And on one side, European leaders are trying to provide a response to the ongoing events. But on the other side, I think that what they would advocate for and what they are most looking forward to are to, however, still balance the relations with the United States. I think that we saw that during the visit of the UK Prime Minister and the whole body language that was there, trying to still trying to give the attention that US is actually seeking, and also the role of Macron as a mediator between Europe and United States, while we know that the whole strategy about gaining more strategic autonomy for Europe was actually proposed by France. So I think that they would, however, like to buy some time, because Europe is known as the old continent, not only because of geographical reasons, but also in terms of politics. Things are moving very slowly here. So on one side, to buy time for the brave decisions that must be there. And on the other side, probably to prepare for the future. But I would say that it's really a high time to prepare actually for the presence, because presence is even more pressing than the future.
You're talking about the dangers to the international liberal order, and you even wrote a memo for the Ibn Khaldun Center about the international liberal order. What is a bigger threat to the international liberal order from your point of view? Is it the United States slow withdrawal or even quick withdrawal from Europe and NATO, or the rise of right-wing parties in Europe? And you saw in the elections, even in UK, even though Starmer won, The Reform Party did very well, and if you look at the percentage of the votes, it was very high, even though the Conservatives lost. And then you look at France, and they were in a crisis for a long time. They thought that Le Pen's party would win, and now you have AfD getting 21% of the vote. In Germany, Hungary is already right-wing, Italy is already right-wing parties. So how do you see, like, what is a greater danger for the international order? Is it the US becoming soft on Europe, or is it the rise of right-wing parties in Europe?
I would say it is the second option, the rise of right-wing parties in Europe, because this is a process that started long before this open politics of the new American administration. And it is as such because it goes directly against the very basic values, the very basic principles of the European integration project on which the European Union has been established. So actually, European Union emerged as a way to end geopolitics as the language of power, and Europeans opted to start more closer economic cooperation in order to avoid all the war rhetoric, all the consequences that were there after the Second World War, which was a long time ago, and to focus on economic cooperation, which is then going to rebuild the solidarity at the European continent, at the European soil, to unify around shared values, a rhetoric that is, as you can already assume, very close to the liberal order. So European Union was established in order to escape everything that can have kind of a connection with defense, with security, to its concept that is, however, as every international organization, even though the European Union is a different entity, but still started at the having in mind the notion of international organization to provide long-lasting peace and security. But its whole concept is actually based on the concept of desecuritization, focusing on aspects that don't have this type of burden in order to create that type of security architecture. And now with the ongoing events, with the rise of the right-wing parties, this whole concept, this whole notion of the European integration has already been in danger even before the open change of the course in the American politics. And that is as such because those parties are actually advocating for different type of policies, actually for less integration and for a more nationalistic, more sovereign-centered approach.
I mean, they are
So
actually.
that's why I would say that it's second.
So, for example, AfD wants to close the borders of Germany, right? So this free travel that you have once you are in the Schengen countries, for example, all of that will go away. Isn't that one of the things that will prevent integration? Because then there will be no easy flow of people, easy flow of goods, and so this reassertion of sovereignty of the state could also lead to, in some ways, also disconnecting the economies, isn't it?
Definitely, the strong point of European Union, of this whole economic integration as the core of the European integration process, is definitely the single market. And the single market requires free movement of people, of goods, of services, of capital, openness. When it comes to the European countries as such, while having a unified approach towards the rest of the world, so Schengen zone. European Union as such is known as a normative power. So till now, when we were speaking among the scholars, when we were speaking about the concept of EU at the global scene, we were always speaking about a normative power, a power that attracts on the basis of the norms and values it represents, so that it creates this it creates this attraction power for other countries from Europe to also have a strategic imperative to join the European Union because of the European way of living, because of the European standard, because of all the values that it represents when it comes to democracy, to rule of law. So Europe as hard power as a global actor that should have military capabilities independently from the US security umbrella is something that is very unknown to Europeans. And now, with the rise of the right wing parties, with all these concepts that are presented to the citizens and that are actually supported by the European citizens, definitely the whole project is at stake, because we cannot speak about European Union, even if it's in its thinnest form of economic integration, if we are speaking about closing borders and departing immigrants.
Leah, when I was in your country, one of the discussions that I met people from, from various groups at your university. I met with people from the Rotary Club. I even met your former president. But I also met, I think, your current national security advisor. And one of the concerns was that there were people who were leaving North Macedonia, mostly migrating to Germany. But one of the reasons why the right-wing parties are rising is because they are so anti-immigration. But Germany also has labor shortage even today. I mean, the Germans have a labor shortage. So our countries in the Western Balkans, or to put it very bluntly, are white European countries like yours, worried that if Asian and African immigration is stopped to Europe, it might empty your countries, because the richer economies of Europe might still have demand for labor, which then they will turn towards North Macedonia and maybe Albania and other Balkan countries to fill. Is that a possibility, or will you also be excluded because you're not part of the European Union?
That's a very good and very in-depth observation. We must arrange another visit to North Macedonia because some of the people that were part of your stay now, because of the change of the government, they are not in power. So the new people should also hear your thoughts. But let's go back to the question. Yes, definitely. That's one of the costs and risks of the current situation. But even if our countries would accede to the European Union, that can even create more problems, because then people will be even more able to leave the country and use all these benefits of the single market and the permission to work in other European countries as EU member states. So that is why this whole concept of European integration was based not only on a political decision to join the European Union, as it is in the case of NATO. In the case of NATO, it's always the political decision first, and then there is the whole process of transformation of the military power, organizing exercises to build the capabilities. While when it comes to the European Union, it is reforms first, compliance with the set conditions first, and then joining the European Union, so that the member states would be able to feel the benefits, but avoid the risks as much as possible. So that is why the strategy to prevent this risk was to actually use the accession process as such to have a higher economic standard, to develop these countries economically, but also to stabilize these countries politically. On the other side, as you said, the whole rhetoric about immigration and the opposition to immigration in some of the European countries who are most relying on immigration is kind of absurd, because if there are no immigrants in Germany, then half of the job places would be left without any candidates to apply. So that is an absurd situation. But that also gives fuel for the right-wing parties, because they are actually relying not on the rational aspects and rational choices of citizens, but on a rhetoric that has more to do with emotions.
No, for Germany, it is mostly a cultural thing, right? the diluting of the white German population with Muslims and Africans and other Asian country immigrants coming in. But they're also worried about certain traditional values. But in other places like Britain and France, there are no labor shortages as such, right? But there's one thing that puzzles me is, and I was discussing this with my students, that Russia is just a $2 trillion economy, and Germany is a $4 trillion economy. And then you look at France, which is 3.5, and so is Great Britain. So you have just three countries there, which between them are all twice or 1.5 times bigger than Russia. And for them to be so paranoid about Russia taking everything if the United States abandons European security, isn't that a bit puzzling as to the fact that such robust economies of Western Europe cannot provide a defense infrastructure for themselves against a country like Russia, which is just $2 trillion? It is smaller than Italy.
Yes, that's a very interesting point. I just read this evening one article which said that if Europeans could have felt this wake-up call only a few years ago and started preparing better, then they would be able to overcome the risk of Russia when it comes to the security, because at the end, Russians are not 10 feet tall. So when we are speaking about security, we are actually speaking about some characteristics as such. But on the other side, we are speaking about money that should also be invested in military and in defense. So till now, most of the European countries, especially the economies that you mentioned, were actually able to perform well when it comes to the economy because of the security provided by other actors and within NATO. So if we look at the facts and figures, especially in Germany, because I was there last week and I'm still processing my impressions, there's nothing to be worried about. Germany is probably the third economy in the world, and people should not fear about their jobs, about losing their jobs or not being provided with the services that the states should guarantee. However, there is this kind of sentiment in the European countries. Now, I'm speaking about Germany, but I think that this conclusion can also be taken on other European countries, that actually the solutions are not there, that the whole democratic scene and the way how policies and politics are being done right now is just not offering solutions to the citizens. They feel excluded, they feel manipulated by the political elites, and probably that was also the point that US Vice President J.D. Vance used when he was delivering his speech at the Munich conference and said that the European leaders are very far away from the citizens. So on one side, there are these facts and figures that are still keeping Europe safe, and there is nothing to be worried about. But on the other side, there is the actual disappointment within the European citizens. Germans are thinking that even the trains are starting to be late, which is something that is just striking the German society. And I think that's also one of the grounds for these problems. So they believe that the system as such is at risk, and it's not delivering as it used to and as they are expecting. And on the other side, it is also the vision of Europe. I'm not sure whether Europe, if we are speaking more narrowly as European Union, has a vision what to do with the continent as itself, and then maybe strive to become more of a global actor that would make a difference in the Middle East or other pressing regions around the world. So it's not being able to be present and to make that difference at the European soil.
I was reading a comment and that Europe is so worried of growing basically this tariff business protectionism by Donald Trump and the United States, and then the rise of China. So Europe's economy is not as competitive as either Chinese or even the US. The US last year grew at over 2.5%. China is still growing at about 5%. Both countries are investing a lot in research now. And if we get into a bipolar system, like a Cold War-like situation, which some people are already saying this is Cold War 2.0, then there will be incentives for both countries to invest heavily in hard power and scientific research. And Europe's economy is not doing well. German economy has shrunk in the last 2 years. The French are growing at like 1%. The British are even less than that. So is there a general worry that Europe is going to be left behind as East Asia and Asian countries rise and America keeps up with them?
Yes, there was actually a report by former Italian politician Mario Draghi a few months ago, which seems very far away from what we are living now, but it was a few months ago, which said that the brightest days of European economy are behind, and that Europe is not able to compete anymore, and it's losing its competitiveness when it comes to the future, when it comes to the future economic trends, especially regarding the US and regarding China. So there is also the economic pressure that maybe even surpasses the security question. And actually, I believe that all these topics are intertwined, but there was also the quote that Macron said, that Europe is also becoming a brain dead project. So that is probably that illustrates that we are living in a time where our understanding about Europe, about the European Union, should be changed. And if Europe still wants to keep the pace, it will have to make some very drastic policy shifts. Maybe starting from the economy, as it used to be after the World War II, but at the same time now also thinking about the security questions in their purest form as such.
Yeah, it's been wonderful talking to you. Your insights on the cultural aspect of Europe and its strategic and economic, shall we say, challenges that faces. Given all that has happened in the past few weeks, do you think that if you were advising the Prime Minister again, would you be gung-ho about joining the European Union? Or you would think that having NATO's security umbrella is enough, and perhaps come up with an alternative policy for Macedonia, or North Macedonia, I should mention?
Well, actually, currently, I'm very happy that I'm not in a position to be advisor to any politician right now, because yes, it would be very hard to make that decision. But on the other side, North Macedonia is part of Europe, so geography also has its meaning. We cannot simply integrate to the United States as 51st country, even though there are some plans as such regarding some other parts of Europe. But
I know. I keep arguing that Greenland should be 51st and Canada 52 now. I've changed my position from Canada 51. So I want Canada 52, maybe North Macedonia 53.
That should be a topic for another conversation, I believe.
Yeah, so, thank you very much for joining.
Yes, the
Yeah, so this was wonderful. For those of you who have been watching, thank you for watching, and please subscribe to Khanversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your socio-political network. And I will share a link in the description of this video to a recent memo that Leah wrote about the international liberal order. So please also read that. And Leah, once again, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you once again for the honor, and I would use the word that is now becoming even more part of the American political discourse. Wonderful, terrific.
And
This was truly wonderful. Yes.
thank you very much.
Thank you once again.